Hey guys, welcome back to Russian Libertarians Corpus YouTube channel, where we, Alexey Postnikov and Gala Bogatova, talk about Russian politics, Russian society, Russian issues in general. And it's unfortunately still the very hot topic because war is still going on and Russian invasion of Ukraine still in the center of the world attention. But this week we want to talk about a little bit different subject, which was in the center of media attention before the war, and we're going to talk about Alexey Navalny. And if you haven't seen the movie Navalny, we're going to attach the link below, and now it's available for free, completely legal to watch. Anyway, the reason we're talking about this is the big in a way award role for this movie Navalny. So about a month ago they got BAFTA, which is the British award in the the world of movies, television, and so on. And just recently Navalny got an Oscar as a best documentary feature. If you're not a big fan of documentaries, you'll be like, oh, documentary is probably boring. This is not boring. This is an actual thriller with a story worth, the actual Hollywood thriller.
A blockbuster.
Yeah, but it happened in real life, and it's still happening. And that's why we talk about Navalny today, because Navalny now is in jail, is in prison for 2 years now, and he's sentenced to, I kind of lost count for how many years, maybe now it's something about 14, 20, but also it doesn't matter because everybody in Russia understands that Navalny will be in prison until Putin will be in Kremlin. So that's our disposition for today's talk. And interestingly enough, me and Gala, we have a little bit different maybe perspectives on...
We have a little disagreement about how beneficial to the society it is that Navalny is in prison right now. Of course, in terms of humanity and the value of human life and the horror of the suffering, nobody benefits from it. But according to Alex, there is an opinion. It's not only Alex's opinion, it's a valid opinion, which I validate and I understand. There is a political power implied in a sense of sacrifice that Navalny is now experiencing, this horrible torture that he's going through daily. What kind of standing does it provide to him, being the symbol of Russian opposition in imprisonment? And Alex and I, we have different perspectives on that, and I just want to throw out a brief disclaimer that this is our personal opinion. By no means I would imply that I'm right. I understand that there are reasons behind his imprisonment right now, and they're very valid and there are strong implications of that. But I just would like to share my own experience, and I would like to hear Alex's arguments.
Yeah. So first of all, when we talk about Navalny's imprisonment, he got imprisoned before the war started.
Right.
So his reason of doing that probably would be completely different after the war, if it would happen. So maybe he wouldn't get back to Russia, or I don't know what he would do. But we need to remember about the war was not, the active war was not happening in 2021 when Navalny got back from Germany to Russia, had been arrested and imprisoned since then. A short in the previous episodes sort of thing. So 6 months before he got back to Russia from Germany. So why he was in Germany? Because in August of 2020, he got poisoned on the plane in Russia. Well, he got poisoned in his hotel number, but on the plane he had the the actual
Reaction.
active phase of poisoning, and he was in coma. He almost died. He got evacuated with like a lot of effort of his comrades, to Germany. And basically the next 6 months was his recovery from being poisoned, during which he actually investigated his poisoning and even talked to one of the person from the poisoner's team. Anyway, well,
Yeah, that's horrible.
Yes.
Like the fact that he actually connected to his own killer was appalling. Like, and the way that the conversation was going, I strongly suggest that you guys Google it if you haven't heard of it before.
Also, it's a part of the movie. The whole movie was made during the 6 months. It started there in Germany after his poisoning, and the big part of this movie is the investigation of Navalny's poisoning by Christo Grozev, who's an independent investigative journalist, CBS, and Navalny and his team. So just go, after you watch this video, go in the description, click the link, watch this movie if you haven't seen it yet. It's definitely worth it. Okay, so that's the short story why Navalny was going back to Russia from Germany. And I remember the discussion around this time was, well, should Navalny get back to Russia because he just got poisoned by Putin? And well, the reasonable suggestion would be at least he's going to be in prison.
Yeah.
And so there were people who were saying like, you definitely should not get back. But he did, and the part of it, I think, is that him being in Germany, sort of in exile, was really comfortable for Russian propaganda to play off. So they were like, well, of course, he's scared. Like, he just cannot, be in the same country as Putin. That's how he's scared. And they were using it to some extent, and to some people in Russia, specifically people who support Putin, most of them never been outside Russia, because that's, maybe we'll talk about it in some other video, how traveling abroad changes your perspective and why a lot of people in Russia have like really weird perspective on the world events.
Yeah.
So for them, for Putin supporters, the fact that Navalny was in Germany, if he would stay in Germany, they would be like, well, this guy, some phony dude who, lives in Germany, probably on American money, because that's another Russian propaganda narrative. Because how else can you live in Germany? Yeah, if Americans will pay you. Again, propaganda narrative. And it was really, in a way, kicking in about the time when Navalny got better. So there was a question, okay, now he's better, what he's going to do next? And I think he decided to come back to show, and that what he said in the airport, like 3 minutes before he got arrested, I'm not scared and you shouldn't be too. And that was really powerful. I was watching this online.
What that was for you, the value of this gesture was the power of it.
Yeah.
And this, like, if I'm not scared, you shouldn't be too. And you, in your opinion, in your worldview, that gesture, that move, should have inspired people to lose fear as well.
Yeah, and as we saw right after, the protests after Navalny's imprisonment in the winter and early spring 2021, it was, I think it was the biggest protest since the breakup of Soviet Union. So basically it was the biggest protest in the modern history of Russia as after Soviet Union. So in a way, the message, God accepted, delivered, and The problem, though, Putin's response to that was like also unprecedented mass repression wave,
Right.
and I think nearly like 20,000 people were arrested, so spent from 3 to 30 days in jail in Russia after those protests. So as a response to Navalny message, don't have no fear, Putin said like, okay, well, I'm going to show you so much fear, let's see how you will deal with that. And in a way it was a gamble, I would say, because like you need to have a lot of balls to get back to Russia after being poisoned, basically get back where the person who poisoned you controls every law enforcement,
Right.
everything, prison system, courts, judges, and just to do that was a really,
So that's the value of his gesture for you. His powerful move that shows how much balls he have, how he's courageous, how he can challenge, put out the challenge to the regime, and the reaction of the regime was extremely intense and a lot of repressions, and that for you shows the value, that you still think that this gesture had the value.
So
do I understand correctly?
Yeah. So that's the tactical, let's say, tactical meaning, because for a short period of time it was like really, it created really powerful impulse for the new wave of protest, and of course it was the new wave of repression, but that's a part of the gamble. And maybe at some point we'll make a video about the first protests of 2011 and 12, where there were like completely different climate. There were people were not scared in general, of the system. We had political prisoners that were existent at the time were more or less like marginalized political radical activists. So if you were like just a protester, you can go and protest. And then, more than 10 years ago now, government got really scared. Putin got really scared. And since then, the stakes of the protest, the success, and the reaction was, they were getting higher, higher, and higher, and higher. So in a way, each time it's like a gamble. And unfortunately, we lost. And I've been in Russia till 2018, so I've seen some of it, not the hardcore ones, protests, but each time we had like a little bit of hope that we maybe, if we'll be more persistent, as I thought, maybe it will change something, maybe we'll, push it further. Navalny's plan is to become next president of Russia. And by going back to prison, going back to Russia, which
basically
is like basically the same, yes. He kept himself in this long political game of becoming the next leader of Russia, as opposed to staying in immigration, be a moral compass, be maybe international figure. But losing, little by little, losing his base of support in Russia and his legitimacy among even Russian opposition people who are still in Russia. So yeah, that's my point.
So if I understand you correctly, to summarize, please correct me if I'm wrong, you see two parts of the benefit, like of certain gains from this. The tactical one and the strategic one. The tactical one is that it would create a wave of protest unseen before due to the regime tightness and the level of oppression that was already present. So that would create a tactical wave that would shake a little bit the regime, even though he expected he would be in prison, even though he expected the fire back backfire
Yeah.
of the regime, he still did it in order to create the wave. Correct? That's what we
well,
confirmed
not
before.
necessarily to create the wave, but
Like to create the impulse
Yeah.
of protests.
Yeah, but there is another. But there is another case from 2013 when he got under criminal case and charges of stealing something. I mean, that was like the thing with Russian government and Navalny. They were creating like bullshit criminal charges against him.
Okay.
And the reason he got imprisoned in 2021, that's because he had a probation from a previous sentencing that got. That's another long story.
Right. So he was basically repeating his life.
But I don't know if you remember this, but in 2013, in the summer, while the campaign for mayor of Moscow were just starting, Navalny had his sentencing for this one of his cases, and they actually sentenced him to real prison time.
Okay.
Then, the same night of the sentencing, really mass protest in Moscow. People went to Russian parliament. Next morning, suddenly, kind of outside of Russian legal mechanisms, they changing his sentencing to probation, or maybe to like, I don't think it was retrial. The main point it was, one day he was basically sentenced to real prison time. Next morning, he's free to go to participate in the election. That's another story, maybe for another video. But my point is, once he got free because of protests.
Right. That's definitely valid. But and I understand that he probably gambled. He thought that case might repeat itself. But I'm not talking as cynical as it sounds right now, and I'm suffering for Navalny, and probably my opinion is connected to my emotional nature, and that I can't see this suffering, and I'm devastated by the situation that he's in right now. But I would like to put it aside for now and think about the political landscape that this case actually makes.
Right.
Here.
Okay.
How does it change the landscape? I understand that he probably thought that it would not end up this way, even though he almost got killed. Like, seriously. But anyways, he might have thought that, well, they didn't kill me first time, they might not kill me the second time either. As the Russian people set me free last time, maybe they do the same right now. I understand that sometimes we predict things from the retrospect of the happening, but I have doubts that this specific case was really strategically sustained. Sustained for me. I will explain myself why.
Sure.
So, in your opinion, that was tactical because it would create a wave of protest, because it may be a gamble for repeating itself for the repeated case of shifting the sentence from the imprisonment to the probation period, and it would strategically add him some legitimacy as a potential legitimate leader and strong rival to Putin. Right? Those are two things. The main things are very valid, and I think that here I understand people who comply with his decision, who yes, it's disheartening, but whatever, he did it for his country, it's benefiting the political opposition strategy. I have a different opinion here because I do not think that the benefits from tactical and strategical benefits from his move actually overweight the loss.
Okay.
So first of all, in terms of tactic and his the prediction of tactical of the wave of the protests as a reaction to his imprisonment, which would be logical to predict, I think it was still not really sustained, because as the political science shows, It is very rare, almost impossible, that authoritarian regimes that especially that tight, they get banished with the protests.
No,
They never swiped by any protest, whatever it happens, it's just a protest and another 20,000 people are killed or imprisoned and the leader of the opposition is even more deeply tortured. The authoritarian regimes, they fall by weakening. As soon as they get weaker, only then the masses will understand that they benefit more from changing the leader than from protesting against them in another amount. What happened in the 1970s. And how to weaken the regime. How it happened. Why do you think the revolution happened? It did not happen because people were fed up and they just started the revolution. It happened because the regime was already weakened by the war and by the policies of the opposition from abroad. Where does Lenin come from? Let's remember, he was sitting there in Germany collecting money, creating his marketing campaigns, and he just was there when it was already safe to do what? He was not even legitimate enough to take over the power. It was still a gamble, but he was there in the right time, in the right place. Even though he was abroad, even though he used the money from abroad, even though he did not create the trust. By the way, the main strategic move is to create the trust in the population. Whoever had the trust at that time, it didn't help them, right? And right now, I also think it was not far-seeing to just do it without thinking about the implication for the political landscape that is so big. And Navalny is such a valuable figure. It's like you're playing chess and you have lost a figure that would walk around the chessboard freely like nobody else. And we've lost him. Right now he is paralyzed politically. He still has the standing. His messages are very powerful, but he cannot really manage his project. And we abroad, we do not have a figure to unite around. And I understand that the democracy should be like the community of different debating and conflicting fractures. Democracy is not just a solid opposition moving against the one regime.
Yeah.
There should be different interests, different political perception, views, debates, argument. Everything should be really messy. Everything should be, everybody wants to have a piece of power. Everybody has their opinion. That's democracy. Democracy is supposed to be messy with different kind of voices, always debating through the machine of democracy. Bureaucratic
right.
procedures. That's democracy. But right now, Navalny is somebody who at least can stand out as the potential political leader, at least not for the entire opposition, of course not, but at least for a fracture that is powerful enough to be a sort of investment project. He would be such a valuable asset right now in the long game, in the long run, to weaken and shake up this regime. But that's only possible when you have the hope to win. You have the hope that at least there's somebody really strong, really legitimate, that is free right now, that you can rely on, that you can show him to someone and say, hey, this is somebody who has at least the best chance to look legitimate from the outside public. What matters even more right now is the outside public that understands that Russia has the representative who can just, who's the strongest one.
Yeah, well, to that, I would argue that only outside. Yeah, I agree that if he would be.
Yeah, having trust into the eyes of the Russian people is extremely important. But he already had that. He already did, even before he's done that.
Well, yeah, to some extent, I would say he had, and he was growing his hardcore supporters supporting group. Much more people who were sympathetic, who were against Putin, maybe not so much pro Navalny, but I mean, if you have someone against Putin, he's still gonna be their but like go-to candidate. Like if not Putin, then Navalny, you know. And by coming back to Russia, I think he solidified himself in this position, and throughout his political career, especially the last 10 years, his tactic was really bold. I mean, he was like going straight ahead, and that's how he was gaining his popularity among Russian people, the respect in the international of the international public. And again, we're not talking about the war, because it wasn't in the picture back then, but I think by just keeping that attitude and being bold, again, it's a big gamble.
I understand. It's very powerful, and I agree that it shows that he's ready to put some skin in it. It creates an immersive, like an amount of trust that is incomparable to other political actors, players. And I cannot say that I disagree with you, Alex, here. I understand that it has some implication. I just feel like, or I think better, maybe I have also feelings about it, but I think that the value that that this gesture produced is not overweighted by the value that he could bring being abroad and doing something every day, something more and more. He could come up with so many other things to show his courage. He could come up with absolutely different scenario of the same thing without getting into the prison. He could, I don't know, I truly believe that there could have been certain amount of interactions that he could have with foreign political leaders that would empower certain internal forces in Russia to act in a certain way. There would be so much value if he was abroad.
No, I mean, I can see your point as well. The thing is, we don't know what would happen if he'd stay in Germany and now be
right. For example, for example, if I imagine somebody like I'm sorry to say this, but for example, if Ekaterina Schulman was in prison right now, I would be devastated. The amount of information that she produces every week with her colleagues, she just nurtures the oppositionist narrative. She educates people on what to envision and how to analyze the past of the Russian politics, of Russian society. And Navalny could have done the same thing, just producing the vision of Russia that is much clearer than we have now.
And again, I understand this point, but while Ekaterina Schulman is a political scientist in the first place, she's not a politician. Although
as a politician, what do you think he could have done?
Outside of, I mean, if he would be free but in exile.
Yes.
I don't know. That's a good question, because there are people in his team who can connect with international leaders and politicians, and they do that because they kind of backed up by his authority, and his authority is that big because he's in jail. And I mean, it sounds inhumane, because I also, as someone who fled Russia long before it was it was risky, but it wasn't that risky as today. Because like today, I would be like, yeah, I would be in jail for sure. And as a person who, you know, fled the possible imprisonment, I cannot say as a human being is like, yeah, okay, like he's gonna go to jail, and like he's in jail, you know, like that's fine, that's the price we pay. But or he pays. That's terrible. A Russian prison is horrible place, and they made it specifically horrible for Navalny, like personally designed hell of sorts. So as a human being, I'm terrified, and I think about it every day, or almost every day, how hard it is to be in those conditions. But for all my, you know, thoughts, I'm just trying to put my, you know, human part aside.
That makes sense. The leader creates political legitimacy of his followers, and the followers there just represent him and connect to the international community, right?
The point is, the more time you spend in exile, the less connected you are to people and their, you know, thoughts and needs of like everyday, you know.
Right, but are you connected to them when you're in prison? Tell me.
Okay, that's a really
and also after this everyday torture, what kind of person is going out of jail? Do you think it's possible to really mentally survive all this hell without repercussions?
I think if anybody can survive this, that's probably going to be him.
Yeah, that's probably going to be him. But I don't believe in this saying, "What doesn't kill you makes you stronger."
No, I believe
it doesn't. If it doesn't kill you, it's probably going to make you a handicap. You know, you're going to be mentally destroyed. You're going to be a vegetable. After this kind of tortures, people have a lifelong PTSD that you just cannot handle serious stuff, because you have flashbacks at any, at any shout and sound. So I'm just concerned about such a valuable political figure that is sacrificing himself for the sake of legitimacy. Because to my eyes, maybe that's my personal opinion. That's probably because I was his follower for so long, and I didn't doubt his legitimacy to this extent that maybe some other people did. But to me, I'm just, I'm appalled by what he's going through. And to me, he would have had so much more value abroad. But I cannot discard the fact that it's true that his team gained so much legitimacy from his sacrifice.
Yeah.
To summarize, Alex would like to offer you his conclusion from this conversation that concerns general.
Right. No, I would suggest to have maybe discussion in the comments about political strategies in authoritarian regimes, because it's not the same as democracies. Maybe give us your best suggestion, because I think we're really curious to hear what you think would be like a good strategy for someone who's opposing such force as Putin and everything he controls in Russia. Is it?
Yeah, because I doubt myself. I think I'm being too emotional about it, and I question my own legitimacy as a political scientist.
No, see, if I let my emotions, as I talked before, to influence, whatever I think about it, but I would be totally agreeing with you, because it's terrible. First of all, I think nobody should be in Russian prison. I mean, even Russian criminals deserve better conditions. That's what I'm saying.
Right.
And especially innocent people obviously should not be in prison.
Absolutely. So I would like you to challenge me. I would like you to challenge Alex, if you please. I would like you to offer some third opinion that you probably hold. Anyways, the interaction would definitely benefit our common ground.
Yeah, and once again, there's going to be a link. Go there, and if you haven't seen the movie called simply Navalny, just do it. I promise you, you would not regret it.
Yeah.
And with that, it's a time for our ritual ask and maybe even plea. Please subscribe to the channel, like the video, share it, show it to your friends, hit the bell because it's also will help us tremendously. And I think that's it, right?
You did great.
Cool. Till the next time.
Bye-bye.